Hi guys, my name is Caleb Carlos. I'm a youth leader here in Parklands Baptist Church, and today I'll be your host for the mental health series for the youth, where our health is our wealth. So we have our guest, and her name is Madam Itzai, and I'd like her to just introduce herself.
Hi guys, my name is Itzai Chabaiwa. I'm a health psychologist, and I'm happy to be here with you, Caleb, today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You said you're a health psychologist. Will you kindly just tell us a little bit about health psychology and what you do?
Yes, as a health psychologist, I do assessment whenever there is a mental health disorder, and also after assessment, I offer therapy sessions. Thank you.
Allow me to also just ask this next question. What made you do health psychology?
Yes, what made me to do health psychology, the reason being is because of I have passion of mental health issues. Why? Because as I was growing up, I lost my father when I was young. And through that loss, I ended up having issues like suicidal thoughts. And when I was having those suicidal thoughts, I didn't get any support. And through that, as I was growing up, I turned up having a passion of supporting people who are going through psychological challenges. Thank you.
All right. So basically for our session today, we'll be talking about depression and suicide because depression, I think at this time and moment right now is a very serious issue, even in our own country and even in the nation far-wide. So the first question I'd like to ask is depression a feeling?
Depression is not a feeling.
What is depression?
Depression is a disease, just like any other disease, just like malaria, just like cancer, just like diabetes, any other disease which you can think about. That's the same as depression. And when someone is having depression, you know that someone is going through depression through the following: sadness, helplessness, anger, isolating themselves from other people. These are just a few symptoms which I can mention, which you can see that someone is going through depression. Thank you.
So what are the causes of depression? Like, what leads to depression? What are some of the things that more or less might lead someone to that place where they get depressed?
Yes. What causes someone to have depression is sometimes life challenges,
Yes.
which the person is failing to handle on their own, which someone is failing to share with someone, that this is what I'm going through. So at the end, what do? They self-isolate themselves. And when they self-isolate themselves, they become helplessness and also hopelessness. And if that depression is not managed, it will become chronic depression. And when it becomes chronic depression and if it is not managed very well, it can lead to suicidal thoughts. And those suicidal thoughts, if they are not managed, they will lead to a complete suicide. This is when someone will commit suicide. Thank you.
So you've said basically depression is more or less like a disease, just like malaria, it's just like cholera. Now, as we know, for this disease, there are also signs and symptoms. And I think as you're talking, you've mentioned a few. You've mentioned anger, you've mentioned hopelessness and sadness. So if you could also be able to just tell us other signs and symptoms that can be able to tell someone, I'm actually depressed.
Yes. One of the symptoms which shows that someone is actually depressed is hopelessness. There is no hope. There is no tomorrow. I don't think I'll make it. I don't think I'm a human being. This is what you hear someone talking about. Someone is continuously crying. And there is no self-care. And that one, I think, this is a symptom which is visible to everyone. I know Caleb. He's always looking smart. His hair is always combed. Not that it is fashion, but there's a way when you realize that this is no longer fashion. It's like Caleb is going through something.
Yeah.
The shoes are not polished. And you could see that the person is not even enjoying life. Even as friends, you crack a joke, the person is not laughing, is always serious. And that's not the person whom you always have in your friend group.
Yeah.
That on its own, it's a core.
So depression is more or less I think it's a feared conversation by people. And you know, there are sometimes when, let's say, somebody's sick, when you have a cold, it's easy for you to actually tell someone, I actually have a cold. But when you hear someone actually, when you ask them, are you depressed? The first thing they'd be like, why would you think that? So there's that tendency where we feel like I'm not supposed to be associated with depression. So is it possible for someone to just wake up and be like, you know what, I'm not depressed? Is it possible for someone to just get themselves out of it by just saying it?
Yes, but to a lesser extent.
Could you explain?
It is very difficult for someone to just say, I am not depressed, and tomorrow they are no longer depressed. Remember, I said it's a disease.
Yeah.
And whenever someone is having a disease, it means they need support.
Yeah.
And when we are talking about depression, there are many different ways of getting support.
Yeah.
There's a medical support when someone will be on the antidepressants.
Yeah.
There is also a support which comes from professionals like counselors, like psychologists, and also there is support which comes from friends, family members, especially when it is depression. When someone manages to talk to someone about what they are going through, in a way they have received support. So it is very important whenever you realize that you are going through something and or you on your own as an individual, you can't overcome it. It is very important as youth to seek support. Even to our spiritual leaders.
Yeah.
Go and talk to them. This is what I'm going through, and they'll support you. Thank you.
Okay. So I think you more or less just even entered to the next question I was about to ask, but I'd still like you to more or less speak on it, because I think there's a saying that says prevention is better than cure. And at this point in time, I think it will be better for people to have an idea of these are the steps I need to take if I'm seeing myself heading to that direction. So what are some of the steps that somebody can take to prevent themselves from getting depressed?
Yes, your question is very important, Caleb. And also, how can someone stop themselves to be depressed? It is the same as how can you stop someone not to be sick? You can't stop yourself to be sick because it is natural. But what can you do when you are now sick? When you realize that now you are depressed? These are the things which I have discussed previously, that you look for help from your friends, from your spiritual leaders, from the medical, from other professionals who are in the mental health profession, and you get support. Because if we say someone can avoid depression, you can't avoid depression. So what is important is for you, whenever you feel you are sick, go out there, look for help. Thank you.
So basically, even to our audience at home, basically what we are saying is, if you find yourself, because she said it's natural for it to happen, so sometimes you might find yourself in that state without actually knowing you're in that state. But the best advice for you to actually do is actually go out and seek help. The same way you go to hospital to seek medication is the same thing you should actually do when you're depressed. Take a step and look for somebody who you can talk to so that they can be able to help you. Now, I know even in our audience, there are people who are like, I'm not depressed, but I know of someone who's actually depressed. Or maybe I'm best friends with somebody who's depressed. Or maybe I see my mom depressed and all that. So the question is, is it possible? How do you deal with people when you're living with somebody who's depressed, or you're friends with somebody who's depressed? How do you go about that?
Yes, when you have a friend who is depressed or a parent who is depressed, it is very important to talk with them. And when you are talking to them, you will talk to know what is going on in their life, what type of support can you offer? Sometimes someone just needs someone to talk to. And in a way, you have helped someone. Sometimes someone doesn't know that this sadness, it is depression. They will just, you know what, these days I'm just feeling sad. You know what, these days I just feel that I'm hopelessness, and I'm just crying continuously. And I don't know what it is. So in a way, it is very important to talk to them. And when you talk to them, tell them, are you free? I can take you to the hospital. Are you free? I know someone who can help you. At our church, for example, we have counselors. Are you free? I can take to my church and you talk to the counselors. Are you free? I can even take you to the hospital and meet the counselors. I know most of the people, when it comes to issues of mental health, they are not comfortable. But it is important to encourage someone. Through that encouragement, they will receive healing. Thank you.
And just in line with that same question, what are some of the consequences of living or being friends with somebody who's depressed? Like, let's say I have a friend who's depressed. What are the consequences if I continue staying with him? Are there any consequences that might come up that might affect me just by being friends with him?
On that one, there is no consequence. But actually, if you have a friend who is suffering from depression, now it's your role as the friend to help that friend who is going through depression, to open them that, you know what, you can receive help, you can receive support. And it doesn't mean that when you are having depression, you are someone who is not good in life. Because many times people fear stigma, fear labeling. So whenever someone have support, especially friendship support, you are also playing a crucial role of bringing healing. Because whenever someone is going through these episodes or through this depression, they need support. And your support, it is also very important. Whether you cheer them up, whether you take them out. Like, let's go for a walk. Let's go for an exercise. Let's go for a bike ride. Let's go and watch a movie. Let's go to church and sing. Try to do some activities as youth. Through that, you have helped your friend. Thank you.
So there's a role that you as a friend have to play when your friend is depressed. And some of these things push us to that place where we have to become selfless. And as she said, one is, if you have a friend who's depressed, just be a person who now starts initiating things. Like, tell her you need to go out on a movie, go out, do paintballing, go do bowling, just find an activity for them to do so that they don't remain in that dark spot. And I believe as you continue doing that, they'll get to a place they are no longer depressed. Now, my question is, in your experience in the year that you've been able to do health psychology, why do you think it's difficult for most people to actually speak out and say, this is what's going on in my life?
What makes people find it difficult to speak out? Number one, I said previously, stigma. People say, do you know that so and so is having mental health issues? Labeling, name calling, and also that on its own as an individual, because of confidentiality, I will not be comfortable for people to know this is what I'm going through. And in a way, I'll be protecting myself from shame and guilty. So someone tend not to share, someone tend to keep it to themselves. So, yeah.
So you've said labeling. Could you explain in terms of that? What do you mean by labeling?
Labeling, if I say labeling, this is when people say, oh, you don't know Caleb. That one, he's always suffering from mental health issues. You don't know Caleb. That one can't even know how to control his own life. He's failing to control himself because he's separated with a girlfriend.
Yeah.
He is controlling himself. He failed a subject at the university and he's waiting for his sub, and in a way, Caleb is failing to control. So in that way, it will be something which is attached to you. So in a way, people tend to keep it as a secret.
Aya, tafadhali kama uko nyumbani, hii tabia kuangalia marafiki unawaambia, huyu anakuwa tu amekasirika. Now we are learning right now because we are all learning. I'm also learning. It's not a good behavior. Tafadhali don't look at your friends and say, we nika unakuwa tu mtu wa mahasira, we unakonga tu umekasirika kila time, because as you do that, there's something it's doing to them and they will not have the boldness to actually come out and speak. So depression never works on alone. Depression ni ka chanda na pete. Where you see chanda, there is pete. So usually the moment you hear of depression, usually the next phase is usually suicide. And I think even as we started, you spoke about it. So my question will be, what is suicide?
Suicide is when someone is trying to take him or his own life. So in a way, it's just like, I don't think I deserve to live. What is next? Let me kill myself. That's depression. That's suicide.
So currently, I think in our nation, the rates of suicide have actually gone high. And now my question will be, why do you think the rate of suicide is so high in our generation, and more so specifically in terms of the youth? Because I've heard of cases where somebody just took a rope and hung themselves, somebody just took a knife, stabbed themselves, somebody just went on top of a building and threw themselves down. Why do you think the rate of suicide is so high?
Yes. Number one, why is it the rates of suicide, they are so high? In the past, there used to be a community life.
Yeah.
Where we live as one. Where my problems are not my problems, but are the problems of the community. But nowadays, when Caleb is having problems, there are problems for Caleb. Sometimes Caleb is not even able to share with his own brother, with his own sister, with the mother, with the father. And through that, I remember we said when someone is having depression, it is because of problems which they fail to manage.
Yeah.
And failing to manage depression, it moves on to suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
So in a way, it is a process. So because there is no that community life which we used to have,
Yeah.
people end up having suicidal thoughts. Number two, there is issue of drug and substance use.
Yeah.
Once you start to use drugs, they alter your mind, the way you think. And in the end, what will happen? Suicidal thoughts will come, and sometimes you kill yourself. So those are the few things which I can mention for now. Thank you.
Okay. So when we talk about suicide, and I think you've also brought the aspect where it's a journey. It starts from depression, you go to suicidal thoughts, then ultimately the goal is usually for suicide. Now, in that aspect of suicidal thoughts, is it possible for me as a friend, or for, let's say we are in a friend group, and for the factors that you've said, sometimes somebody is sad, somebody is hopeless. So maybe I've seen a friend of mine who's going through these stages, everything that you've talked about, they're actually in that place. So is it possible for me to spot just by conversation that actually this person might be going through suicidal thoughts? Is it possible to pick it from that person? And
Yes.
how do you pick it? What do you pay attention to so that you are able to know, I don't think this person is in a good place?
Actually, it is easy for you to pick it. How do you pick it? You hear from them. Some, they can even tell you, man, I don't see there's a reason for me to live. And that is a red flag. Somebody will come and say, Caleb, I think this is the last day for us to meet. Wish you all the best in your life. I don't think there's tomorrow for me. And also, someone can start to distribute their things. Caleb, you are my friend. And I want you to remember me when I'm no longer there. Please take this, my favorite jacket. Show that you are my favorite friend. All those things shows that someone is almost taking away their lives. And whenever you see those red flags, look for help. Say that your friend will find some help, will be supported.
Okay.
Thank you.
So to our audience at home, this is just for us to be on the lookout. And I think for the youth, it's possible for you to just pick up these small sentiments. Sasa kai mtu anakuambia naona nikikufa hata si vibaya. For you, sometimes it might be it's a joke. but you need to also just ask yourself, dig deep and ask, mbona mtu alisema hivi? Because I think recently I was seeing a video on the internet, and this person was driving the car, and now he wasn't alone, he was with a friend, and was like, mi nimechoka na hii maisha. And you could hear the other friend being like, wewe bro, tulia, because if he's driving a car, the goal in Amansha, he has already made up his mind. So sometimes when you see these actions, all of a sudden your friend is giving you things and they are not going abroad, it will be a good place for you to ask yourself, might it be possible that my friend is going through suicidal thoughts and want to commit suicide? So if you get to see that in your friends, kindly go ahead and speak to someone so that your friend may be able to get help. Now, for the next question, I'd like to know, there are people who've tried suicide before and it actually failed. So is it possible for someone to recover from a suicide attempt and get to a place where they are well?
Yes, I've met many people who have recovered. And how do they recover? When they get support, professional support, which include taking them to the hospital or finding like a counselor or a psychologist, any mental health practitioner to come and help them. Someone will be able to recover and also moving on with life, not leaving out. Even spiritual intervention, it also helps when someone is to recover, and also the support from you, the friends. Like I said, as a friend, you play a crucial role. One day I was talking with the youth, and you know what they were sharing is, whenever one of us is going through something, we are always there to support. And these kids, these youth, they were sharing that, you know what, we find one of us was having a bottle and he was cutting himself. And through that, we were able to sit with him, talk to him in a language which you understand. Because actually, as youth, you are the right people to support each other because you have the language which you use. And when you use that language, you are able to find each other. And through that, you take your friend to that mental health practitioner, to that medical facility, and they'll be well. And they'll move on with life.
Okay, so tafadhali, friend groups, be there for each other. And I think one thing I've just picked right now is the moment you notice that your friend is being involved in self-harm where they just cut themselves, because I think I've had situations where some just cut themselves, others use an inhaler. So I think it will be good that is speaking something to you and it's telling you your friend is actually not okay. Now, for this discussion, maybe there's that somebody who they've already lost a friend to suicide. Like they had a friend or a family member who actually ended up killing themselves. Now, is it possible for this person? How do you heal from that aspect where you know that your friend died because of this? Because there's usually a very big hit back to you yourself, because there's a tendency you'd feel like, why was I never there? So how do you heal from that aspect where you lost a friend to suicide?
Yes, how you heal from that aspect, you have to look for or search for grief counseling and get support. And also, when you look for that grief counseling, it depends on how it have affected you. You have also to look for trauma counseling, say that you will be helped to overcome that trauma. At the same time, you are overcoming a grief. So I think those are the two suggestions which I can offer. Thank you.
Allow me to do you have any other suggestion just to give in terms of that, necessarily what they can do towards that, just to add on?
Yes, I think for now there are those two, because those two, they are very crucial. Because sometimes maybe someone was the first person to meet when their friend after just committing suicide. It means that person is traumatized. And also after the trauma, that person is also going through grief because they have lost someone.
All right. Even as we come to the end of our conversation here today, because I think what I've picked up from the whole conversation is the tendencies of depression. There's hopelessness, there's anger, there's the aspect of insomnia. There's the aspect of somebody just gets tired of life. There's sadness. There's a person who just tends to cry each and every time. And I've learned that depression leads to suicidal thoughts leads to suicide, and how to be able to manage somebody who's attempted to do suicide before, and you as a person how to also take care of yourself, because if I don't take care of myself, I won't be able to take care of my friend. Now, just your last words basically of this conversation is what would you tell somebody maybe who's watching us at home, who's going through depression, or who has a friend who's going through depression and they're having suicidal thoughts? What will you tell them?
Yes, one thing which I told to those people who are going through depression and suicidal thoughts, there is always hope. And that hope is when you seek for help. It is very important to seek for help. If there are no professionals near you, it is important to seek help from your friends, to your family members, from your neighbors, anyone who is near you. Seek for help. I remember there is an article which I was reading the other day. This other youth was saying, you know what? While I was in that deep hole, in that dark hole of depression, I just read on my Facebook, on my Instagram, I just post, you know what? This is what I'm going through. Within minutes, there were people who were there to support. Let's call for help. Let's not keep quiet when we are going through sadness, when we are going through anger, when we are having suicidal thoughts. Let's cry for help. Crying for help is not a weakness, but actually it is a strength, because there is always tomorrow. Those are my encouragement. Thank you.
So if you're at home and you're watching this episode, this is just an encouragement that the state you're in does not mean that's the final state. It means you can be able to get help out of it, out of depression and out of suicidal tendencies. But you need to take that bold step of actually stepping out and seeking for help. Because the main goal of, the main way to deal with depression and suicide is seeking help. So go out, you can talk to your friend if you don't have the strength, and maybe your friend can be able to go out and ask for help on your behalf. But even as you're sitting at home, my encouragement to you is there is still hope. Just as she said, there is still hope for you. So thank you so much. Today I've been your host, Caleb Carlos, and my guest, Madam Itzai, and I hope where you are, you've been blessed. And this is our mental health series for the youth, our health, our wealth. Thank you so much.